Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel, our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world, all in one place, RTV.network.
Hello and welcome to the Connect Caribbean Report. My name is Carolyn Howell and I'm here on Callaloo Alliance Media, our TV network. Today we've got a really exciting show. It's going to be the wrap up of our season 1, which is always exciting because we get to bring all of the special things back together. Coming up, we're going to be hearing from Chris Principe, who is the publisher of Financial IT, as well as Grant McGaugh, the CEO of 5-Star BDM, John Clendenning of the IC Group, Anthony Weeks with RTV Network and SETI Case, and so much more. So today is going to be a really good one as we're discussing the path forward. So what did this first season look like? What conclusions have we come to? And what is that path forward? That discussion is going to follow after these messages. Stay tuned.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Few advancements in the ongoing trade war. The European Union and the U.S. were unable to bridge trade differences this week, as White House officials said the bulk of the U.S. tariffs imposed on the bloc will not be removed. President Trump is also urging China to reach out in order to kick off negotiations after Beijing ordered its airlines not to take any further deliveries of Boeing jets. The Canadian government is easing up on automakers and says it will import a number of U.S.-made cars and trucks without tariffs as long as the companies keep manufacturing vehicles in Canada. Apple reportedly prepared for the Trump administration's tariffs by shipping nearly $2 billion worth of iPhones to the U.S. back in March. According to Reuters, Apple's main India suppliers were behind the airlift that marked the biggest shipment ever for Apple. I'm Nancy Lyons.
Hey, Grant, how you doing today? And welcome to Connect Carib. Grant,
thank you so much.
Just so everyone knows, is my lead, and I follow him religiously when it comes to the Financial IT Big Picture Show, which is also on Wednesdays, but at 10 a.m. So look forward to that. So, Grant, glad to have you on the show here today. We want to talk about some things Caribbean related, CARICOM related, and the region in general. Going forward, what do we need to connect with the rest of the world?
Well, it's about platform and it's around opportunity, right? There's so many different changes. Everybody knows. I mean, the financial picture is changing across the globe. There's been a big mix-up But a lot of people don't realize you've got to look for the opportunities in the platform shifts. And and I'm going to just take it back to the November time frame when it comes to what we're doing around SETI case. And even probably even before that, when Anthony Weeks and his team went out to New York City for the New York Stock Exchange, anticipating change in the Caribbean region and having, for the first time, the USVI, the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Croix, to be at the table and be able to transact business and commerce and actually create a new financial system or marketplace within St. Croix to create new economic development. I'm representing Cornerstone Capital in that respect from an investment banking perspective, in which we can bring new opportunities, especially for the lower middle market, which ranges from anywhere from $3 million in EBITDA all the way up to $100 million in revenue, and have really investment opportunities that can take place not only in St. Croix, but throughout the Caribbean region, including CARICOM, as you stated. We're bringing the mainland U.S. into play, where it really wasn't in play before, and having that opportunity to really grow and having St. Croix as a centerpiece in that growth. I am so stoked about that. And that's what we've been talking about on our show in the big picture. We've been talking about on SETI case. People have been seeing a lot of the kickoffs, what we're doing, like what is this all about? And it's really about opening up new markets where there weren't before, and really having a great. And I just came back from St. Croix last week to kick off the 5-star BDM, presence in the region, real time, as I partook. I was, in the Taste of St. Croix, and I'm still full from that whole experience. But I'm here to really bring clarity and opportunity for SETI case in St. Croix.
Well, great. I mean, Grant, you covered a lot of really interesting things there. And, I think if we just talk about the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Croix in particular, that there's a lot of benefits there that people both in the Caribbean as well as on the U.S. side are probably not so aware of. And those benefits cover taxation, a lot of benefits for tax, for your tax situations. They cover communications. It's a center. It's one of the number 3 center for communications, and also for shipping. There's a lot of unique maritime laws that are specific to the U.S. Virgin Islands that can be leveraged when we look at the U.S. Virgin Islands as the centerpiece and the gateway between the U.S. and the Caribbean.
When you bring that up, you're speaking, you're my zone of genius, as I would say, especially when I speak to my 25 plus years in information technology. And when I found out that in St. Croix, there is one of the largest fiber networks located right there on the island. This is a underutilized asset. And when you start looking at what some of the creative advantages are in areas like in Silicon Valley, or like even in New York City, and what you talked about even earlier this morning about that some of these financial companies have bigger IT related services and technical expertise than AWS and Azure. Some of these bigger places, you say, no, you're kidding. Like, no, this is a major thing, being able to transact business. So we have the ability to transact on a worldwide scale right in St. Croix, utilizing our own services right on the island itself. This is huge, and it is major. And the more that we can bring that into play is what sets St. Croix apart. And what you said about taxation, a lot of people don't know that federal income taxes, if you're located on the island for 6 months and a day, you become exempt from federal taxes. So what I like to see, and I'm gonna throw this back at you. Can you see St. Croix being the new Delaware of corporations actually incorporating here, having their base of operations as a headquarters out of St. Croix because of these tax opportunities?
Well, Grant, I think it's a really interesting question, and a lot of people are not aware of, but there's many people I grew up in Manhattan, right, and New York City, and I have friends that work down in Wall Street and everything. But it's always surprises me the more and more people that I hear that work on Wall Street actually have second homes in the U.S. Virgin Islands, particularly St. Croix. So they're already understanding the benefits and what that can mean, you know. And there's no reason why this can't be enhanced and be able to be more accessible all the way around. And I believe that some of the policies from Governor Bryant is looking to really highlight the benefits that you can get in the U.S. Virgin Islands versus the United States proper, or even Puerto Rico or some of the Caribbean islands, which certainly advertises as a good place to live.
100%. You know, I went down, you know, I flew down because you don't need a passport if you're an American citizen to fly down to the Virgin Islands. So I fly directly into St. Croix. I'm just, you know, met by a lot of different people. Anthony is one of them, and he showed me around the entire island for a week. I'm still spinning from all the different areas that I went to. But I'm bringing up this point because when I left, you have to go through customs, right? He's like, whoa, why did that happen? Because it's the third border.
Yeah.
Moment you can come into St. Croix, but you can't just leave. You got to leave and show proof, and you're treated like any other international traveler because it's an international port. Makes it unique because when they bought the U.S. Virgin Islands from the Danish, they had written this clause into the contract. So I think they're exempt from the Jones Act. There's certain exemptions and opportunities that people just aren't aware of. And if they factor this into their financial plans and how they can take advantage of opportunities, not only in the U.S. mainland, but in the region of the archipelago and the Caribbean nations, and then understanding that we've set up a financial marketplace within St. Croix, this starts to become very, very advantageous. And Chris, talk to the audience, because I know you know about this. What do you mean by a third border?
Well, you know, it's an interesting topic, and it's something that's gained prominence, particularly with the new administration. You know, the idea is to protect the U.S. We have ongoing issues with illegal aliens and with shipments that come in. So if you have a third border, you can actually do that immigration check and that customs check before it actually lands on the U.S. proper, let's say, right? And the U.S. Virgin Islands is ideal for that. You mentioned the Jones Act. The Jones Act is very important when it comes to transshipments. And there's a lot more to it, but that's basically one of the key aspects of it. So I would like to see in the Caribbean, you know, first, why CARICOM agreement hasn't been revised for today, as the new things, the internet's not in there, digital currencies, none of this stuff is in there. That needs to be revised. But why can't the U.S. Virgin Islands be the gateway for the Caribbean, where you actually can allow people from the Caribbean to come there, not go to the U.S. unless, again, they have the right qualifications, visa, green card, passport, whatever it is, as you'd had to do at the border. That could easily be a way of being able to open things up.
Wow. You guys bring us some really interesting discussions. This was really good. Normally, we would have had Ambassador Thomas here, but with you two here handling the Connect Caribbean World, this was a really good report. Lots of interesting points, good things for us to think about. So thank you all for doing that. We're going to be sitting tight and waiting for our very next session with this, which is Connecting the Dots with John Clendenning. So stay tuned after these messages, and we will see this.
Thank you.
For the Bloomberg Small Business Report, I'm John Tucker. There's a historic mansion on the northeast corner of San Francisco's Alamo Square Park where several dozen people live, spending their days immersed in aesthetic concentration. Welcome to HFO, or Hacker Fellowship Zero. The goal is to attract the best entrepreneurs. The Live-In Startup Accelerator promises to strip away all of life's tedium so that founders can have the most productive 12 weeks of their life and birth their real life's work. The program comps living expenses and hands over cash in exchange for equity in each startup operating from its house. The residency, which started in 2020 and just completed its 7th batch, has maintained a relatively low profile, even as it gets thousands of applications for each session's 10 slots. Among those who've attended are a dozen founders who previously built companies with billion-dollar valuations. HFO takes a 5% equity in each.
Mr. Speaker, let me begin by commending my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, Representatives Wenstrup, Sewell, and Blumenauer, and indeed the membership of the Ways and Means Committee collectively, for joining me in support of U.S. trade and economic relations with our Caribbean neighbors. This resolution is the product of a year's worth of work, and today would not be possible without the bipartisan support of my colleagues from across the aisle, particularly Representative Wenstrup and his leadership in our shared commitment to a focus on U.S. trade engagement in the Caribbean. This resolution commits to enhancing the economic partnership between the United States and the Caribbean region through strengthened trade engagement, including by promoting economic growth and development across the region, engaging directly with diverse stakeholders from the Caribbean, and supporting critical trade policies and preference programs. The Caribbean, along with Latin America, have experienced significant challenges in recent years. According to the International Monetary Fund, IMF, we've seen a large GDP contraction from the region than any other place in the world. Simultaneously, per capita deaths from COVID have been greater from the Caribbean and Latin America than any other region in the world. Furthermore, many of the island and countries in the Caribbean have experienced severe natural disasters, such as the recent earthquakes in Haiti and numerous other extreme weather events like hurricanes. So this resolution simply expresses support for furthering U.S. trade ties and economic relations with the Caribbean region. Overall, the resolution expresses the importance of the existing economic partnerships between the United States and the Caribbean region and strengthening U.S. trade and investment ties with the region. Presently, the U.S. does about $35 billion in trade with the region, and its American businesses can have a greater opportunities to grow in the region with our help. Deepening economic ties between the U.S. and the Caribbean region helps American partnerships across the Western Hemisphere, where we support.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Connect the Dots portion of today's broadcast. Just now, you've seen our Representative Stacey Plaskett talking to Congress about the opportunities in doing our economic development here from almost a public relations standpoint, as she's garnering across the aisle support of both Republicans and Democrats in looking at the path forward. This afternoon, as you know, we're having a discussion about the path forward as we look at the vision for the Caribbean Economic Union. And we are looking at how we can draw on existing frameworks, as was mentioned by Delegate Plaskett. And in this episode, we're looking at those Caribbean policy frameworks of the United States government and others such as CARICOM to emphasize the three hubs that we've talked about in St. Croix, Trinidad, and Barbados, and how we function as a core supply chain logistics hub for harmonized trade and steady case when they talk about the Caribbean America's single economy. So what I would like you to do now is to say, let's look at this as the vision of the path forward, but let's look at the Caribbean Economic Union in 2035, okay? So imagine a fully integrated Caribbean Economic Union, anchored in a tri-hub system in St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands, Trinidad and Tobago, and Barbados, and then facilitating this international seamless trade, manufacturing, digital finance, as was mentioned by Chris Principe, and sustainable development. This union in 2035 will capitalize on geographic proximity, regulatory diversity, global partnerships, becoming a leading example of what we would call an island state innovation in supply chain management, manufacturing, financial technology, and education. So that's what that vision would look like that we're talking about. So how do we connect the dots of what we're talking about? And I think that when we look at our tri-hub economic model, we're talking really about these three places and distinct competitive advantages for each of them. So in St. Croix, the gateway to the United States, this third border that was talked about, we have free trade zone status, a U.S. regulatory framework. We have manufacturing initiatives, shipping across to the U.S. and Latin America and West Africa, opportunities for green technology, digital banking, and this U.S. Caribbean small and medium-sized enterprise initiatives. In Trinidad, we have the energy and infrastructure backbone that we need in the Caribbean basin. So we have the home to the Caribbean's largest industrial port, Port Lisas. We have strong foundation in petrochemicals, LNG, and heavy industry. We have a critical for both shipping, energy-related technology, and regional logistics integration with partners that we bought into this, Connect Carib. And we have strategic partners in energy transition and climate resilience initiatives. And then the third leg of how we connect these dots in the Caribbean are in Barbados. We have financial and financial technology innovations in this hub, emerging leader in digital ID, e-payments, and regulatory sandboxing, banking, CARICOM leadership in education, legal reform, and sustainable tourism. We have Barbados' position to attract financial technology firms, digital nomads, and green investment platforms. And so it's ideal also for corporate registries in capital markets and regional development banks. So those are the three hubs that we look at a path forward in our vision. And I'm going to go now to Chris and say, how, when we look at these things, all of these opportunities and the opportunities that were brought up by you and Grant earlier today in your broadcast, and then today with his experience of actually seeing on the ground our innovation in fiber optic technologies and capacity, and then also looking at the regulatory environment and framework. So I think connecting these dots as this last wrap up of our this second season is extraordinary. Chris, what say you?
Yeah, I mean, John, you pretty much went right across the board and hit all the key factors. So I'm just going to enhance one or two. And, one of the things that needs to happen, I think, is when we talk about financial technology, to me, the greatest resource in the Caribbean, and you mentioned a number of the natural resources, but the greatest resource in the Caribbean for me is the people. There's a population that is educated, that is hardworking, that wants to progress and learn, and there's a lot of innovation there. So being able to bring this to bear in terms of developing the innovative technologies that we need, I think should be paramount from every angle that we have.
Yeah, I think so. And it's just interesting. And I see Carolyn has joined us when we actually look at these things from a practical standpoint. There exists an EB5 program. There exists CARICOM CSME vision. There exists a Steady Case initiative that exists. The U.S. Caribbean Strategic Engagement Act. We have a unique status of the Virgin Islands, which is outside the U.S. Customs Zone. And we have a South Shore Free Trade Zone that's been enacted with U.S. Virgin Islands law. So there are specific things. And when Grant mentioned that people from Wall Street and Chris are coming here, with the current status today, with our hedge funds and other companies that are there, there's $3-4 billion of funds that are already moving through in a financial technology aspect. So people are taking taking advantage of these opportunities. And I think the current political environment just leads to us, and the governor had a conference last week talking about how we could take advantage of the things that we have in place here. So, Carolyn, it's
Wonderful.
a wonderful way to connect the dots.
I was going to say, wonderful way to connect the dots. This is really good. There's a lot talked about this season, and you pulled it all together, and we appreciate that. Now, coming up next is going to be In the Spotlight, and we're doing something a little bit differently. We have had some amazing spotlighted guests over these past weeks, and what we're going to do after the commercial break is come back and delve directly into some of those vibrant interviews. So everyone stay tuned.
This is the Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. The monthly rent landlords are asking for is falling slightly in some places, but it's still going up in others.
Rents are high because inventory is low and because there's market uncertainty.
Ryan Serhant is a luxury real estate broker and also star of Netflix reality show Owning Manhattan.
When people are uncertain, especially if they're looking to rent a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom and they're comparing interest rates and they're looking at their potential monthly payments, then they stay renting. They don't move. And so that's why you're seeing those rent prices go up.
Manhattan rents are levitating. Meantime, Redfin says rents rose in the Baltimore, Birmingham, Boston, Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit, Providence, and San Jose metros last quarter from a year ago, but fell in places like Austin and Dallas. Redfin's also warning rents could go up from here because apartment construction is slowing in many metros. And also new tariffs could make building materials more expensive. And that's the Bloomberg Real Estate Report.
And I think that some of the things that we need to do is to be able to get a structure both for the financial community as well as the legislative communities that brings the Caribbean together, and we are able to merge the different interests in a way that we become more of a block rather than individual countries, so that we have some greater influence. And the CASE initiative, the SETI initiative, all speaks to that, and those need to be pushed forward. But if I have to say what is, in my view, the key thing, it again comes back to education. And that education is really what we need to focus on in a lot of ways.
How do you see the diaspora now when we take the solution to them? What are we telling them to leverage the region's tourism from their standpoint and their input?
Absolutely. I think the first thing is to be able to identify what are the needs and what are the opportunities. From the tourism perspective and from a foreign direct investment attraction, we got to make sure that you as a destination can align your products and services to be able to offer it to them. And at the same time, be transparent in regards to the industry sectors within hospitality and tourism that you are lacking. So for instance, if we're lacking more hotel rooms, if we're lacking more restaurants, or we need more attractions, that's where we need to put the focus on, and to be able to present to the diaspora, if you want to invest, this is what you are. If you want to come home as a tourist, tell us what you would like to enjoy other than the original aspects that we already know. So for instance, I'll give you an example. I'm working with a destination, I'm going to keep it nameless. They are currently working to be able to attract more investment for the diaspora, but they decided to focus a lot in IT industry.
So they are working with them and they're putting all the facilities, and they have presented a plan to them, says, okay, we need more jobs when it comes to fintech, when it comes to health tech, when it comes to cybersecurity. These are the areas that we want to actually focus on to be able to assist us to be able to develop our tourism platform. Why all these three are important? For instance, if you want to make sure that they want to collect data, that's when AI plays a role. Cybersecurity, they want to make sure that when they use their cards, when they are exchanging data, they want to be using a secure platform. At the same time, they want to make sure that they are on top of technology. So when they run a transaction through a POS terminal, for a sales or for a restaurant, it will be actually done in record time, just like the same way they do it when they're back home. These are the type of things that they're, trying to focus on. Also, they're trying to say, hey, you know what? We need X amount of hotel rooms because, the demand has increased. But for us to be able to bring that demand in terms, what does the different destinations in their Caribbean will have to offer? We want to focus also just on the corporate travel. We want to bring more, small conferences to the islands. That we want to bring more leisure market. These are the type of things that are going to be relevant for them to be able to make the investment and for them to be able to say, hey, it really makes sense to go back to my destinations and invest money.
What visa options are available for Caribbean individuals for starting or expanding a business in the U.S., including the U.S. Virgin Islands?
So interestingly enough, there are many opportunities. I think that in terms of individuals looking to start a business, it's good to speak to an attorney, kind of understand what they're looking to do and how. But specifically for Caribbean individuals, there's a visa called the E2 visa that's open to individuals from Jamaica and Trinidad only, unfortunately. But that allows them to come into the U.S. and invest. In terms of the type of investment, it could be anything, invest in the U.S. Outside of those countries, we have something called the L1 visa that allows individuals who have their business in the Caribbean and looking to expand their operations to the U.S. They can utilize that visa. There are several investment visas if people are at high net worth and looking for a passive investment and even a return on their investment, and that will allow them to get a U.S. permanent residency, a green card.
Now, what are the trends that we're seeing? More and more, we're seeing increased interest in cross-border investment, meaning countries within the Caribbean, in the CARICOM setup, want to trade, want to invest in each other. So we're seeing people setting up processing facilities, whether it be coconut, whether it be other processed vegetables, whether it be shadows, whether it be berries. We're also seeing people looking to invest in technology, which is in keeping what the theme is today. And investing in technology, not only primary production technology, but also post-harvest, also processing, and even more important, human resource development and human capacity building. We're seeing a heavy trend there where persons would have gone to the university, studied, whether it be robotics, computer programming, and design, engineering. We're now seeing those persons applying those skills in the sector here in the Caribbean, and that's an encouraging trend.
Most of our ports in the region are public ports serving a domestic marketplace. And in that context, the level of investment is not mirrored by some of the private ports that have a different mission. And so we see models where our regional ports lack the appropriate investments. They lack the investments in infrastructure, technology, automation, digitalization, and you want to speak to the whole issue of even the transformation that's required now as it relates to decarbonization. So we are far behind the 8 ball. If you go to a number of our regional ports, they were built in the 70s, 60s even, and early 80s, very old structures. You would probably find ports that are not in line with the containerization that we now use as a main mode of transport. Most ports were built as break bulk ports, handling pallets and boxes. That transformation has not yet taken place. mostly because governments are finding it difficult to raise the capital to actually enhance the sport. So there is that gap, and it's a gap that needs to be closed.
As a very successful Asian American, a woman that happens to be involved in imports and exports, how has our government's latest tariff policy going into effect affected what you're able to do in North America, Asia, and the Caribbean?
So I'm in business, in the U.S. about 30 years and never see these things happen. This is just like every day since the beginning of February. I talk about tariff, and I probably already lost my voice. It's been like more than a month we're talking about tariff situation. So I think tariff really impact the small business a lot and woman-owned business. We have a group, as you know, that Karen, I always admire you. You're always like a mentor and leader and powerhouse in all the woman group. And we talk about this all the time. This is really affect our business. Not only inflation, we're losing the consumer confidence. The retail business is not great in January and February. In February, especially, once that announced, the whole situation happened. And then this tariff is different from 2017 and 2018. At that time, they're giving the 6 months lead time. So small business or business can have a time to prepare, changing their supply chain and start diversify this global sourcing.
At the end of the day, people are only going to be interested in providing a service if they know there is a return on their investment. Absolutely. So I see that there's a modality between the government laying the infrastructure as it normally does in our region and subsidizing that cost of investment, and the private sector perhaps with some financial and operational incentives providing that service. And it becomes, I would dare say, much more critical, as I hinted earlier, than the current dynamic environment in which there are so many risks associated with decisions that may be taken in Washington.
In terms of the cultural exchange through tourism, how do you see it evolving? What's your vision? How do you see it evolving in the next decade? And what role can organizations like the BHTA play in shaping the future?
To me, I think we are right now in a transition of the decade of change. I've been saying that for over a year now. Ideally, when we are building out what our infrastructure and our marketing and our programs are, we need to connect with all of our sectors. So if you're looking at historical type of tourism, then we don't need to just build one museum, but you need to build a school that educates people as the reason why the museum is there. If you're going towards sports tourism, you need to be building out facilities that cater to sports while you're also marketing about sports, but also you have infrastructure from hotels and villas, etc., that cater towards sports as well as the MICE segment. So these are the kind of areas that I'm thinking that we need to go towards. From the BHTA perspective, we're a lobbying organization. So obviously we meet with our members, we hear from them, we go and lobby on their behalf as to the areas that we think can increase not just their spend, but also increase what their offering is, whether that's food and beverage concessions or construction concessions, as the cost of construction has gone up significantly and it has become a challenge, or is it that we're lobbying for the entrance into the island to become more affordable so then we can expose people to what we're doing here and get them to spend more?
Wow, what a tremendous In the Spotlight. Want to thank all the guests that we had. Those interviews were powerful. We covered a gamut of subjects. And that's really what the Connect Caribbean report is all about. That is why featuring individuals in the spotlight is so vibrant and so valuable, because we get to talk about the subjects as they're happening. So thank you for watching our In the Spotlight compilation. You can watch any of those shows on our TV network at any given time. And when we come back, we're going to weigh in on those, bring all of our co-hosts back a little earlier so that we can have our connected voices and then do our wrap up. So stay tuned.
Reimagine a world where the Caribbean is seamlessly connected, where our people, our cultures, and our economies move freely across the islands. This is Connect Caribbean, more than a ferry service. It's the heartbeat of a new era, an era where economic opportunities expand, where trade flows freely across our seas, and cultural exchange flourishes. We are linking businesses, empowering communities, and reigniting the hope for a truly integrated Caribbean. Together, we're shaping a brighter, more unified future for the Caribbean. Connect Caribbean, connecting our islands, our people, our future.
All right. What a great show this has been. And just watching those interviews, I'm sure each of you have something to add to what we were listening to, or just your very own thoughts as we're ending season 1. So have at it, gentlemen. John, I'd love to get your perspective out of the gate on some of those interviews. I do want to thank Chris Principe, Andres Hayes, Simone Williams, Sean Baugh, Wendy Shin, Darwin Telemack, Adrian Bahari, and Ryan Ford for letting us review some of what they had said. So, John.
Great. Thanks, Carolyn. And I guess as we look at our connected voices, I'd like to connect the dots of what we were talking about there, and suggest to my colleagues that what to them, what is this unified Caribbean supply chain and hub in the Caribbean? What's it going to look like in 10 years?
Good question.
Well,
Anyone?
yeah.
Anthony?
So clearly, when we look at the path forward in economic unity, the common denominators are the fact that you have CARICOM and the Caribbean markets and single economy. You have the U.S. strategy engagement in the Caribbean. Then you have the role of technology, and you have currency. If you recall, while CARICOM was successful in rollout and implementation of most of the components of the Caribbean markets and single economy, where they differed and where there was an impasse was the issue of currency. Now, when you have the role of the United States and what the United States bring to the table, the common denominators are policy, innovation, and currency are fiat. The US dollar is the dominant currency in the world when it comes to trade. And then you have, in the archipelago of all these independent countries and territories, their own nationalities, their own currency. And so it's difficult for them to agree to, if you will, overlook their national currency to then look at a common currency. Now, are there precedents for this? Absolutely. The European Union has clearly created the euro through this economic bloc, right? We can achieve the same thing through technology, whether through digital currency, blockchain. You don't necessarily have to, if you will, dismiss the national currency of any of these countries. You can come together seamlessly using technology to transact using digital currency and settle in your local currency after the transaction is completed. So there is precedence for this, and I know that the path forward in the Caribbean Economic Union, that those common denominator can make a difference in that regard.
So Anthony, and following it up, so we know in an integrated supply chain, there are 3 components: the movement of the physical asset, there's the movement of the money, and there's the movement of the information. So I think what you're addressing when you look at this economies, Bitcoin, other kinds of digital transactions, we already have, in my view, a global system where when we do trade, we can settle a money issue. So it's not, as you said, it's not going to be, and 10 years from now is what I'm trying to focus on and see. I don't think money is going to be the issue. Okay. I think the information is going to be
Money is going to be the common denominator, actually.
common denominator, and we're going to solve that. The real issue is, how do we solve the information? Because we have different languages, we have different formats and structures. We have a digital divide where we don't have the internet presence in all of the Caribbean region, and the access to the technology by the small and medium-sized companies, the access to the financial markets and banking. So when we look at 10 years from now, and back to what Grant had brought up about seeing for the first time this fiber capacity that we have, it's the diaspora of the data centers, the satellites, the communications means, telephones, smart devices that we have that are going to, in my view, transcend and make this single economy a reality. So the technology is upon us, both financial technology, digital technology, supply chain logistics. And so for us, really, I think that we are ahead of the power curve. And we're not just ahead of the power curve from a vision standpoint in our region, but we're ahead because we have the things in place in the legislation, the free trade zones. We don't have to invent these things that says this would be a good idea.
Those are the framework. Those are the framework that's necessary to do that.
Okay, and gentlemen, I think that's great. I'd like for either you and Grant to weigh in on this, because you know that these two can volley all by themselves, but I know you've got thoughts around this.
Grant, a little bit about what we had on our show this morning, because this was a key topic, and you had some very powerful insights.
Yeah, when you look, I'm going to take it from the tack where you're saying, what is it going to look like in 10 years? And I want to encourage people to look back just 15 years ago. And when I say this, look at mobile compute and how it changed the world. How people are more glued to their cellular device than they are glued to a television set. Let's say it like that. So how's that going to look 10 years in 2035? Where you're at right now with artificial intelligence is baby steps. What's going to be taking place is enormous. This is a leveraging tool that a small, mid-sized company will be able to compete with very large entities that they never could before. Taking point, people are familiar with ChatGPT. Yes, and Microsoft has pumped in $10 billion. Yet a younger startup called DeepSeek in China was able to do ChatGPT type functionality with $6 million. So economies of scale would say, well, you know what? I don't have the capital to compete. Well, yes, you do. You just don't realize it. A lot of infrastructure has been built out that is of public use. And we need to educate ourselves on the public use of that information, to what John was talking about. We need to leverage information, not just in what we call information technology, but what we call intelligent technology. That is the big gap, or the big curve. That's going to be the big change. It's not going to just be about information. It's going to be about intelligence, how to use the intelligence to leverage economies of scale to move things in and out, whatever it may be. But whoever can utilize the intelligent technology the best is going to be the winner in 10 years from now, and understanding how to utilize that type of technology.
But are we going to need a formal union to achieve that, or is it more symbolic of a union? Because at the end of the day, access to the type of innovation and technology we're talking about globally is how I think that, like you're saying, Grant, and everyone else, policy is one thing, which speaks to the red tape and the bureaucracy. But I think that competition is going to force all of us to resort to what the latest technology and innovation is going to allow us to be able to function and compete.
To answer that just real quickly, look at the lens like this on the grid of of where power lies. There's the tech states, there are the nation states, there is the power and the people. The tech states right now, if you really look at it, are winning. Tech states don't have to answer to all the different laws and regulations that nation states have to, right? So that's why you're starting to see these tech states, these large corporations have more power and influence than nations do. That's never happened before in human society.
No borders. No borders.
No
That's
borders.
exactly what you're talking. No borders.
So I flip it back to Chris, who just came out from Paris, and he sees, blockchain, things like that. Nations don't own these things.
That's right.
Yeah, and Grant, you're right. I spent last week at the Paris Blockchain Week, which is probably the largest event of its kind in Europe. And that's exactly the feeling that you get from there. There was no nationalistic talk. The talk was the talk of technology and how it connects everyone. And what we can't predict right now, John brought up a great point with 2035, is what the pace of innovation is going to be. And, for instance, we went through a little phase where the VR and the metaverse were talked about a lot, and that's quieted down now. But it may have been just a little bit too soon. Maybe later on in the next 3, 4, 5 years, there's new developments there, and that becomes something that instead of people looking at their phone all the time, I don't know, they're wearing something that gives them all this information and this ability to visualize things as well as listen to things as well as see things and search for things. So, it's just really exciting what can happen between now and 2035, and it's hard for us to see. But again, if we look to educate our youth, if we look to educate our business people on what the advantage is, if we look to get them to be open to the technology, it's not going to be about rules and regulations as much as it's going to be about innovation and forward progress.
Yeah, Chris, now you talk about, and I want to question about in Paris. So we've talked about the nation states versus the tech state. What about cybersecurity? Because that to me is one of the large things, because with the AI and with the people holding companies for ransom and being able to do this, and our reliance on smartphones and technical devices, these things can be compromised. We have, shielding that we try to do and protect our devices, our personal identification keys, our banking information. So to me, that's the wild, wild west of, even if we can solve these things, we have to do it in a cyber secure way.
Well, John, what I'd submit to you is it's not the wild, wild west. I would submit to you that it's an arms race. And as soon as we find a way to protect ourselves, we have the other side finding ways to get back in. It will continue to be an arms race. Okay, it's not the Wild West. That's where there's no rules, there's no laws, right? And technology is what's going to keep us ahead there. And you're right. Cybersecurity is going to become more on an individual, corporate, and personal basis, and the governments themselves, because we all need to be active in our own protection.
Yeah. The two elephants in the room for the Americas and the Caribbean, obviously, that we are contended with right now is the issue of immigration and tariffs, right? Tariff speaks to the issue of the deficit of trade between nations, right? In the role of in the role of the Caribbean, what is that value proposition that the region brings to the United States and vice versa? Because it has to be an exchange between the region. And clearly, the region has, like Guyana, has certain natural resources, but you also have the ability to be able to say to where we can tap labor. It's not about becoming citizens of either country or region, but to access labor, to do business and invest. As long as we keep it within that framework, the borders are not going to be an issue, because people are going to move freely, because it's about conducting business, it's about investing and moving labor for the purpose of augmenting the lack of labor in its respective jurisdiction.
Interesting you say that, because of those two things you just talked about. There's going to be a major migration of people with these things that are happening. Like, before, people were coming to the United States, let's say illegally, and then work in certain industries that actually propel those industries. Now that's gone. What takes the place of that? So people start looking at, technology. Can I use automation and robotics to take place of human capital? Remember, the human capital is the most expensive resource in any company. So you got to start looking at ways to augment that. There is huge amounts of change that's going to take place in the workplace when it comes to the use of AI and what its capabilities are. That you don't need, a human first interaction so much going forward, and people will get used to it over time. This is a major change. Now, I want to bring up another thing that's going to be mind blowing. When John talked about crypto, cybersecurity, there's a new reality that's going to come out with the model of AI. That's quantum computing. Quantum AI is such a huge game changer in what computers will be able to do. Quantum AI can crack codes that could not be cracked before. This is going to force innovation to happen. It's going to force governments to have to change and get out of their own way, because you can't just sit there and say, you know what, we're going to change policy every 20 to 30 years. That's not realistic. That's like sitting out there with a dial-up phone when everybody's on a smart device. You're just not relevant. So we've got to step back, take a look at where our innovation is taking us and what this is going to look like. And when you have law changes in law with immigration and tariffs, what does that game board look like from a human capital standpoint, and how we can take advantage of it?
Especially with the fact that we are seeing more and more virtual workforce, right? We see Fortune 500 companies literally going abroad to hire the back end, the back room, human capital to help run these companies. And so it's going to be open territory, if you will, between the Americas, where you're going to have access to a virtual workforce, which are going to be needed to help augment, if you will, connecting those industries and sectors as well.
Wow. So let me ask you this, just as we are wrapping up this very first season, I want to go to each of you and just give me one word that gives me your thoughts and attitude as we wrap up this season. What is your one word about the shows, the guests, and the topics we've talked about? Chris, I'll start with you.
Well, one of my favorite words, innovation.
Innovation. All right, John, this is going to be a toughie. What's your one word?
Cigars.
Okay, that would be some sort of commodity, and we've talked about that. I'm going to Grant, please.
Creative.
Creative. Anthony.
Transformation.
And that's what the show is all about. The Connect Caribbean has really been a way of looking at all of those things, cigars included, John. And we are all looking forward to the start of season 2. We will see you back here in a couple weeks. Thank you all, gentlemen, for being here. Thank you to our listeners and our viewers. Stay tuned. Feel free to watch our shows on RTV.network, the shows that maybe you've missed. And we will all be back here in a few weeks. Thank you all so much, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel. Our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world, all in one place, RTV.network.